Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Mr. Dumb Rocks. In this episode, we're going to we've already added a turret, but we're going to add some functionality to the turret, including a little bit of animation, as well as we're going to fire some bullets. So to do this, we're going to remember how we set this up. I moved the init turret method or function from update PhatKids up here because for right now at least, I will later on want all my init methods together, but right now I'm going to have this one up here because I only want to put one turret on the stage just to get this moving. We're going to change this later, but for right now that will be helpful. And so I've already put the code in that is going to init the turret. It's very similar to init enemy. The difference is I'm only putting in one turret at the moment, so I establish the turret using the keyword new, create an instance of that, set up the X and Y coordinates, putting it at the bottom of the stage, and then I'm going to set up the rotation, and I put it within the confines of the play area mask, and I simply add it to the stage. At this point, I'm going to come back over here to our turret function, and I am going to add an event listener. And the event listener that I'm going to add in this case is going to be an event enter frame. So I'll simply say event just like we did before, and I'll say enter frame, and with that I will call a function called update turret, and at this point I just simply need to take this name and I'll write that function down here. So I believe this can be private, so right now we'll just leave it as a private method or function. Incidentally, I'm using the word function and method interchangeably. Essentially, the only difference is that a method is usually contained or dependent upon a class. So a method is a function that's being written inside of a class. But since all of these functions that we're writing are inside of a class, in this case the turret class, it is essentially a method, but ActionScript uses the keyword function. So for our purpose, everything that I write will be whether I say function or method, for our purpose, we'll just use those two words interchangeably for now. In any case, private, and I will call this guy function and give it a name according to what I have up on top. I don't need to have an input parameter, nor will I return anything, and so I simply begin and end my curly braces. And what I need to do is, first of all, adjust the rotation of the turret. I'm going to do this like I did before. I'm going to take the change in X, and this is going to be a number. And we're going to set this equal to, we're going to take mouse x minus this dot x. So the x coordinate, since I'm working inside the turret class, this refers to the turret. So wherever the mouse, or the x coordinate of the mouse is, I'm going to subtract from that the x coordinate. The reason I'm doing this, just like before, is that I'm going to use some trig to find out the angle of rotation. Same thing with dy. In fact, I won't copy and paste, so I'll just take the time to write this. Number equals mouse y, and now I want to subtract from that this dot y. Now, we could write this without the keyword this, and it would in effect do the same thing. If I simply said mouse.x minus x, the program will understand that this particular x, when it's all by itself, refers to the x coordinate of the object that I'm in. In this case, I'm in the turret class, so this is whichever turret has this code embedded in it. In any case, I'm going to come back down here now, and I'm going to set the rotation. Again, I can use the keyword this or not, and I'll say rotation is equal to, and I'm going to use a math class again, and this is going to be math.atan2, and I will put inside of this the parameters dy and dx, the change in y and the change in x. And atan2 is going to calculate a degree, or it's going to calculate an angle measure. The problem is it's going to calculate this in radian value, and what I want to do is convert now from radians to degrees. Before, when I was using sine and cosine, I converted from degrees to radians. Now I'm going to take this radian value, I'm going to divide by pi, and the way that I get pi again is math.capital Pi, and that gives us the math constant, and I'm going to multiply that by 180 because pi radians is equal to 180 degrees. At this point, that's almost ready to go. The problem is mouse X, when I write it just like that in here, is going to refer specifically to anytime the mouse is touching this object, which happens to be the turret. What I want to do is reference the stage, and since the turret is being placed on the stage, the parent of the stage, of the turret rather, is the stage. So if I say parent dot mouse Y and parent dot mouse X, that should give me what I want. I'm going to save this now and see if I can run this, what will happen. It says I've got a property event. Okay, same problem I had before. I need to access this with, I'm going to say import. It'd be nice if Flash did this for me, but it does not. If you're using something like Eclipse for writing Java code, it just puts this stuff in for you by hitting Control-Shift-O. Unfortunately, ActionScript makes me type it in. But I do have, let's see, Flash events dot event, since that's the event that I'm using. And now if I run this, I can see it runs well. Now it's not following my cursor, and that's because it says I've expected, actually it says the opposite. It says I've expected 0, got 1. In fact, it should be expecting 1. I forgot to put in my event parameter. So this is going to be EVT is my parameter of type event. Now I'll save it one more time and run it. And at this point, the turret follows nicely, and it does not fire, but it does follow the mouse. So now to get it to fire, I will go ahead. Every time I come into the frame, I'm going to add another event listener. So I'm going to say add, and the event listener that I'm going to listen for this time is whoops, I don't want to add child. So let's try that again. Add event listener, and this event listener that I'm going to listen for is a mouse event. So I'm going to say mouse event, and specifically what I want to listen for is a click. Okay, so now when I do that, anytime I click, I want to fire my turret, and take my caps off, so fire turret. And there I'm good to go. I just have to write this code. And so what do I want to have happen? I'm going to do a little bit of animation to make this work, but let me write this as a very simple method. I'm going to come back here and say, I'm going to make this public. I don't know that I'll be needing to access this from another class, but I'll say public function fire turret, and in this case I need to have a input parameter, and the input parameter that I want is a mouse event. So I'll put MEVT, and I'll say mouse event, and up here the same thing I did before with event. Now I'm simply going to import a mouse event. So all I have to do is add the word mouse here, make sure that I have, this is the type that I'm collecting, so I'm going to have that here, and I'm going to have that here. In all three places they match. And at this point I'm ready to write my code, and all I'm going to do in here is say play, and that's going to play the animation that I have not yet created for the turret. So let's go into the turret and take a look at that. If I come back to my FLA file and I look at my turret, notice I have two layers, the base and the barrel. And what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to add a layer right here, and this is going to be for AS3. I'm going to write one little bit of code here, and if I hit F9, interesting. If I go into my turret and I come in here, let's go into Windows, let's go into Actions. I don't know why that didn't work, but anyway, I'm going to say stop. So it will automatically not run the timeline. Now actually in this timeline only has one single frame right now, but I'm going to add some more frames. If this is running at 24 frames a second, I'm going to come down to about 8, so about a third of a second I'm going to play the animation, and I'm simply going to hit F6. And what I want to do is just change the location of the barrel. And so to do that, I hit F6. I'm going to count. I'll count the arrows. I'll come back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll come back, hit F6 up here again, come over to another frame and hit 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to come back, hit it again. I'm going to come back 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to come back again. I'm going to come out 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to come back 1. I'm going to come back 2. And now I'll be done. So let's see what this looks like. If I look at my turret class, it says play here. So every time I click, now this actually, I think I'm going to need the keyword parent here, but let's try it as it is right now. If I were to run this and say fire, it doesn't fire, but notice it fires when I put the turret or the mouse directly on the turret. So the way that I can adjust this is if I put the keyword parent here, and now anywhere I click on the parent, which happens to be the stage, I'm going to get this little 1/3 of a second animation where the turret moves. Now, in addition to this, I'm going to create a bullet and fire that. So we're going to go ahead and do that in just a moment. Okay, now it's time to add a bullet, and so we're going to create a bullet class. I've already created a bullet on the stage. If I come back to my FLA file and I look in here to bullet, I've created a bullet, and this bullet is, I just made it a little bit colorful as I go from, there, let me enlarge it a little bit so we can see it better. So it's a little polystar, and as I go from frame to frame by scrubbing through this little bullet timeline, all I'm doing is I'm rotating a little bit, changing the color, so it should give us a little animated effect, and so we can see it moving around. It's not working or doing anything right now because we don't have the code for this written, but let's run the program right now to see what it's doing before we add that. I slowed the ships down to a speed of 5, and I made it so that they are only, let's see, 10 ships. So to do that, I went back into the enemy, and I changed this speed from 10 to 5. I went into PhatKids, and where it says init enemy, I changed this to 11. Okay, at this point I want to create my bullet class, and to do that I go back to my FLA file, make sure that's saved, come into bullet, and I click information. At this point I can click on the pencil. Notice I have bullet here. Bullet is shared as this class down here. It's being shared as a movie clip, and if I click on this I will say okay, and here's my bullet class. So what I want this bullet class to do, or what I want the function to do, is I want it to actually move in much the same way that I moved the enemy. And so all of this code, by the way, I can take all of this and simply copy it, and I can paste it into my bullet code. And so to do this, oh, you know what I should do even before I do that? I'm going to save this, and it'll automatically choose bullet, and it'll choose it in this area. Now I go ahead and save the code from enemy. Now the thing is, the name of the class and the name of the construction function or method must be the same. So that guy needs to be bullet. Also, it'd be silly to call this update bullet or update enemy, so I'm going to call it update bullet, and this guy I'm going to change to bullet. Everything else in this has the keyword this, and again, I don't need this. If I got rid of this and simply put X here and here and here and here, it would function in exactly the same way. Same thing for rotation, because when I'm in the bullet class, this dot rotation or rotation mean exactly the same thing. And so at this point I'm updating my bullet, I'm calling this function, and if I were to write this, or if I were to run this program right now, let's see what happens. Looks like I have, oh, another problem. I did not include this event, so let me do that. I say import, and again I'm going to use from the Flash package dot events dot looks like I'm just using good old standard event, and now I save that and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to say Control Enter, and now if I run this, I notice that it's firing. No bullets are appearing, and of course they won't, because back in turret when I'm playing this I'm not adding a bullet, so I want to add a bullet right here. So first of all, I will create a bullet. And so if I come in here and I create, let's say var, I'll call this guy bullet, and he will be of type bullet. Again, the class is with a capital B, the variable is with lowercase b, and so this is going to be equal to a new bullet. So this is creating an instance of bullet using my keyword, or my word new. In any case, this is going to create the bullet, and if I simply add the bullet to the stage, I can say add child, and I can say bullet, and let's see if this works. If I click on this now and run this, notice that I am firing bullets, but I've added them to the turret, so they're collecting the same rotation, if you will, of the turret, which is kind of weird. So let's instead add them to the stage. I'm going to say stage dot, and now I'm going to add them to the stage. If I click that, it adds them up here. Instead of saying stage, by the way, I should get in the habit of saying parent, and even though the parent is the stage, should do in effect the same thing. You can see the bullets riding along the top. The default position is 0, 0, and the default angle of rotation is 0, so they're starting at 0, 0, heading in a rotation of 0. So I can change that right before I add the bullet. All I need to do is give it the same location as my turret. So I'm going to say bullet.x equals, since I'm in the turret class, I can simply say x, and likewise I can say bullet.y is equal to y. Now, at this point, if I run this, they're starting in the right location, but again, the default rotation is 0. So now all I need to do is I'm going to say bullet.rotation is equal to this dot rotation, or simply rotation. And so now, whatever rotation is when I fire the bullet, they should match that rotation. And that is going to work. Okay, that's it for today. Bye-bye.